What's going on, everybody? We've been waiting for this one for a while. We brought the big guns to talk about the topic that seems to be super polarizing. And 55 of you are already here, which is awesome. So I'm not going to delay this. I know we're ready for some action. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in Dave. Now, Dave, how's it going?
Good evening, Greg. Thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. So tell me, how did we get here? Because I just know that, Mangini put out a few comments about alterations and restorations. And then all of a sudden you do a video and say, we're debating. And you reach out to me, Greg, will you help moderate this? And I'm like, I'd be honored. So what did John say that made you get here?
This topic is ages. I mean, it's been going on forever. I think we can all agree that alterations, restorations, and whatnot have been going on. And it's always in the background and being talked about. And it was certainly a big deal in 2019 when PWCC was selling all these cards. But, John, when he puts rant in the title of his video, I'm all over it. And he knows it because his views go way up. So he had his rant on altered cards, and it was really upsetting him. And I'm thinking to myself, John, just calm down. Just calm down. It's not that bad. And I think that we need to look at this from all angles. I think we all agree we hate fraud, but there's a big continuum on alterations. So I thought I would just call him out because he's all in for good fun. He's a great sport. And I think we'll just have a great conversation. I'll play devil's advocate a little bit. Maybe he will as well. And I thought you would be a fantastic moderator. You're a teacher. You're used to raving idiots. You can get in control of the classroom. And so I thought you'd do a great job at it. Certainly knowledgeable about cards as well. So that's why we're here. I think I should say that neither John nor I have prepped. I haven't looked at any videos or read anything about this subject because I didn't want my thoughts, contaminated. So here we are. And I just want to talk to John about it and you.
Oh, well, first of all, truly, honestly, the fact that you reached out to me, I'm genuinely honored. I respect both of you. You guys have legendary collections, well known in the hobby, and I think it's a good thing to talk about. So I can feel Mangini pacing back and forth in the background like a gladiator waiting to come into the forum. So let's get him on the stage. Mr. Mangini, how you doing?
I am so thrilled to be one of the two crazed lunatics.
So I think there's so many places we can start, and I think that there's a few different categories of things to talk about here. But I think the first thing on where we start is, what is the definition of an alteration and what is and isn't acceptable? So, John, what do you consider an alteration?
Well, an alteration to me is, changing the card, fixing a pinhole, trimming it, coloring it, cleaning it, would be the definition of alteration to me. Now, I know Dave liked to use the ridiculous analogy of flicking a booger off of it. To me, that's not alteration.
So when you say cleaning it, what is cleaning it? Does cleaning it mean with a solution or just wiping the card down? Is that cleaning?
Yeah, let's say that you have a 1914 Cracker Jack and it has Cracker Jack stains on it, and you can soak it and get those off in order to get a higher grade. I mean, that would certainly be altering the card, would it not?
Let me ask Mr. Bluejacket. Dave, is that altering a card, soaking it and getting the stain off?
I don't think it's clear cut, but I will play devil's advocate and I will say, no. You name one other thing in life that is not acceptable to clean. You find a 57 Corvette in a barn and it's been there for 75 years. You don't leave it like that. You clean or restore the condition. I'm no way for altering, trimming, etc. cards, but as far as routine cleaning, what makes you think that all that dirt and grime is not supposed to be on the card and it is there is far more detrimental to the card than cleaning it off with some water and a Q-tip?
Is it? We don't know the long-term effects of that. If you take old cards from the 1800s, and this has been going on, you know it, where they remove the glue residue from a scrapbook, over time, that glue will come back and the color fades on the card. So now that we have grading, so you're not grading that car that you're talking about. Now that we have grading, let's say that thing gets slabbed, it gets slabbed high. Somebody goes out and pays 30, 40 grand for that thing. And a year later, some of those effects come back, similar to how you might buy
John, the effects of water? Water's
it's
been around a
possible.
long
I
time.
don't know all the cleaning solutions and everything that are being done on this. I know, like, they're filling in pinholes. So if you fill in a pinhole, is it possible that that comes loose and that pinhole shows up later? I don't know. I don't know the answer, but we don't know the long-term effects.
Let me
I don't know once it's slabbed.
So I have not, the thing that you're referring to. So last night, John was on the For Collectors channel, which, by the way, subscribe if you're not a subscriber of For Collectors. But they were talking, and Orlando was talking and sharing a story where he had a card that he bought it. It was clean. There was no issues. And then over time, it was a slab card, if I'm not mistaken. Over time, the stains started coming back and showing up and getting darker and darker. And so it does sound, I mean, everybody loves Orlando. He's telling the truth. So it does seem like stains could come back, is to support, I think, what John's saying.
Well, I'm not supportive of cleansing with most artificial agents, because I agree it could be caustic to the card. I'm not against, and I think most people, I shouldn't say that, but I'm just going to throw it out there, many people who have been in this hobby forever, and the top people are perfectly fine with soaking in distilled water or water and gently cleaning things away with a Q-tip. Now, my point with this whole alteration is there's a continuum between having a card and refusing to do anything for it, including removing an eyelash. That's a ridiculous this end. And the other end of the spectrum is those that alter cards by adding to them or trimming away. That is to defraud people. That is the other end. And my point is, between there's a spectrum. And at some point, if a cleansing or is not detectable, what is the harm? What is the harm in something that's not detectable? Other than saying, well, it might be detectable later. Well, your PSA holders may, next you know, in 25 years, everybody's cards may become rotting. The environment, just the air may do it. The sunlight in your card room may do it. And we can talk about this and that, but I think generally speaking, people want nice looking cards and they don't want dirty cards. And therefore the value is more. And I think that a non-intrusive, gentle cleansing in my book is okay. And I've done it. I've soaked, I mean, come on, watch YouTube. There's tons of finds and scrapbooks, and Brian Roth, you know, had those 49 leaves and they're in a scrapbook, and now he's video, they're graded. You know, they didn't just, brownies didn't get those off those, you know, those index cards. And they look fantastic, and I don't have a problem with it. None.
And I understand that, because if you can't tell, who cares? You can't tell.
Let me ask you this, John. Go ahead. Then I'll ask you a question.
Well, the thing that I see, this is a deep and complicated subject, and I'm not exactly against. Yeah, I'm not exactly against restoring cards. I'm not, and there is a big spectrum. So where do you draw the line? If you're allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do this. But at the end of the day, if nobody can tell, if PSA is grading them, then who cares? Who? The whole thing is just a little icky, because the reason that it's done is to get over on PSA and to get over on people. You know, it's not like you're always doing this for your own collection. You're trying to get a grade up. Now, this brings me to, when I say it's complicated, there's other factors that come into this. So does this make grading obsolete? You know, I hear all the time, the reason that I get cards graded is because I want to know they weren't tampered with. I want to know that, you know, they weren't messed with. Well, if all these cards are coming out and we're seeing it, we're seeing trim cards graded, we're seeing altered, restored cards graded. So does that make grading obsolete? I don't trust a graded card today hasn't been altered any more than I don't trust any other card.
So let me ask a quick question. So
Can I follow up on that? Can I follow up on that?
Go ahead.
Because he said a couple things. One about trusting grading, and two is if it's not detectable, does it matter? So I'm going to ask John a couple questions, and I want him to know that I want him to answer honestly, and that every answer that he gives is the same answer I would give. Now, John, here we go. And I'm not an attorney. I'm not putting you under the thumb. You have a vast collection, probably more ungraded cards by far than graded, but you have both. Altering cards and messing with them or cleaning them is ubiquitous to the hobby and has been for decades. Would you agree that you have cards within your collection right now that have been altered and it's undetectable?
It's possible. I wouldn't know. Like I said.
Okay. I would say that you do. And I would say that I probably do. So if you have cards, it's possible, and you don't know. Yeah. My question to you is, yes or no, will you sell off or give away your collection because it may contain altered cards that you can't detect? Yes or no? That's an easy one. No, of course not. And that brings me up to this interesting point. I was thinking today, and I was thinking about, I love old movies, and I love Paul Newman. And one of my favorite Paul Newman movies is called HUD. And it's in the 50s, Texas, West Texas, on a steer ranch with his grandfather. The bottom line is, at one point in the movie, their herd of thousands of steers, one of them tests positive, or a couple test positive for hoof and mouth disease. And the answer to that is, when a couple of your steers have hoof and mouth disease, is to destroy the entire herd. And that's what happens. So if we in our collection have a few infected cards, our answer is not to give away or sell or destroy our entire herd / collection. What it is we've decided to accept that we have altered cards, and if we can't detect it, then I guess it's okay. Otherwise, you'd sell off your collection.
Now, let me ask you a question. You have raw and graded cards. Do you believe that you have altered graded cards with numbers?
I would, if you said we did some research, you do, I'd say I believe it. And now the next question, you ready for it? It's a big one.
So doesn't that make grading kind of a scam?
They've come a long way.
If you don't
here, I'm going to put myself on I'm going to put myself on the cross here. Your next question should have been, so you think you may have cards, including high-grade manels, that may be altered or trimmed or whatever. Your next question would be, to really put the screws to me, do I care? I guess I don't. I guess you don't either. Otherwise, you'd send every single one of your cards to a grading company, find out which are altered, and sell those.
No, I've always believed grading's a scam, so that's why it's not important to me.
Well, it's a scam in a lot of ways, and
you think those guys that have all those 8s and 9s, T206s, Cracker Jack cards, T213 coupons, seriously? You don't think those have been taken?
Yeah, they're in with PSA. They're in with the registry. It's an old boys club. Come on. Back in the shows, they'd bring their cards back to PSA and yell at them until they got a bump in their grade. That's the way it is.
Yeah, just like the crack, re-submit.
I think the question should not be to us little guys out here, are we buying good or bad cards? There's higher ups. People should have Nat Turner on when they have them on their podcasts. They shouldn't be asking them, what's your favorite 60 set? And do you worry about SGC gaming ground? It should be, hey, first card PSA ever graded, certification number 000000001 is in a PSA holder, and everybody who walks the face of the earth knows that that's an altered card. Why has that not been decertified? Why? And why, when you're shown all this proof by Boda about these clearly trimmed and altered cards that are resubmitted to you, you say we stand by our opinion? Those are the questions that should be going to Nat Turner, who himself owns altered cards. He owns a PMG Jordan that's altered in an altered holder. Those are the questions that need to be asked. And until you start asking the auction houses, how are you vetting these 8s and 9s of these cards that are being submitted? You know, how are you vetting that these are good? And you know the auction houses, the TPJs, until they take responsibility, which they're not going to, nothing's going to be fixed. Nothing.
No.
So let me ask you guys this question. I mean, because I think a lot of the alteration, I think most people agree color added is out of bounds. I think most people agree trimming is out of bounds.
Now, wait a minute. If it gets graded, is it?
Is it out of bounds?
Evan Mathis, you know, got trimmed cards graded. Is it out of bounds? If you don't know, ignorance is bliss. You have no idea.
If
PSA slabs it and grades it, you have no idea. Right?
Yeah, to give them credit, or you know, it's easier said than done. I don't expect them to not catch these cards.
I'm not saying they never catch it. I just want to clear that up. I'm just saying that we know of certain cards that they didn't catch, that they assigned a number to. So if you don't know, and it's graded, I mean, if it's so good that it gets past professional graders,
then it's good.
Then who cares?
That's the bottom line.
Then who cares?
That's right.
And you can sell it and make a big, make that bank. And the buyer, the buyer has no idea. And the seller's happy because he made that bank. Everybody's happy. My thing is, it's I don't know, like, Dave, you said that you're going to go out and buy altered cards that are slabbed altered this year. See, for me, I like to collect stamp backs, where people had their initials, some kid from their T206 collection or whatever, because there's a certain aura about getting certain cards and putting them in my collection and kind of continuing that kid's legacy or whatever. And to me, the reason I don't buy altered cards, for the most part, I bought one, and it's from the 1800s, is because it's just bad karma, man. Because whoever altered that was doing it to scam somebody over.
You don't know that.
That's why else would somebody alter a card, trim it? That's why it was good.
I don't know. Look at your 59 bazookas that they're cut off boxes. A lot of cards they like trimming them up and whatnot. It happens all
I'm
the
not
time.
talking hand cut cards. No, I have lots of A's in hand cut cards. You and I are in agreement on that it's kind of silly to even grade them or assign a number.
Well,
so the thing I'm really curious on is what the line in the sand is, because yes, I mean, you make a point, John, that once the card's in a holder, then it's gotten through. But I think there are a lot of people at home right now who have cards, and they kind of are like, well, if I soak it, am I committing fraud? Am I committing fraud if I press down a corner? And so I wanted to just kind of throw a couple of questions out there to you guys with that in mind. And the first one I wanted to ask is, if the card is restored somehow and no one can tell, what does it matter? That I think we're kind of on the same page on. I think you both kind of think it doesn't. Is that correct?
Well, I'll
go ahead, Dave.
Okay. How can it, if it's undetectable, how can it possibly matter?
Right.
It's impossible. You guys, guess what? I'm sitting here and I have no pants on, or I have a dress. If you can't detect it, no harm, no foul. No one can tell. It didn't happen. Who cares?
Okay.
It does not matter.
How about
pants
this
on or a dress?
How about this one? Who here hasn't put their finger on a marginal corner of a card and not worked it outwards? So is putting your finger on a corner of a card and pushing it outwards and pressing it, John, is that alteration in your opinion?
I don't know, man. It's very complicated, and everybody wants to talk about the line in the sand, like it's okay to use a cloth. Some people say it's okay to do that, but then they draw the line with maybe trimming or soaking. Other people say don't touch it at all. To me, there is no line in the sand. Alteration, restoration, which by the way are synonyms. Everybody says I shouldn't call it alteration. It's the same thing. So it's here to stay, right? and it's now accepted in the hobby, and it becomes more and more accepted every single day, and that's fine. It's changing it in a big way, but there are other things that change with it, like I'm saying about trusting grading. That's something that will be affected. It will definitely be affected by this.
What
Well,
about you, Dave? Is that alteration in your opinion?
no, you know, how many times have you put a card in a top loader or in a binder and you're like, doing, you know, the corner phrase a little bit, it catches up on it. And what do? Well, I would guess that 99.99% of our viewers, you put it between their fingers and pinch it back down, then put it back in. And no harm, no foul. However, people get all out of sorts if somebody makes a YouTube video of them taking that same corner, instead of squeezing it with their pinky and index finger, rolling it out with a piece of wood dowel or something like that, all of a sudden that's alteration, but it's not alteration when you squeeze it between your finger. So,
well, is it alteration if you're taking a 4 and turning it into a 7? I don't know. Is it?
Well, is it okay to press down that corner that catches on a sleeve, in your opinion, John?
Well, you're talking about, you mean you damaged it?
Yeah, so you're putting a card, you're putting your own card.
Dog ear, yeah, I don't want the dog ear. Like I have one that PSA slabbed that way. Yeah, everybody's going to when you put it in a holder or whatever, you're gonna take that dog ear and face it the other way. But if the card's still damaged, you could still open that dog ear up anytime you want. It's still there. We're not removing it.
Yeah.
I got to tell you something. This just blew my mind. I think it was about 10 years ago. And I think it was on Net 54. And someone had sent in a beautiful card, vintage card, to PSA. And PSA sent them back a picture, and he posted the picture where they had accidentally dinged the corner. You know, it was peeled up. You know what PSA did? They said, no worries, we're rolling it out with a spoon, and they gave it a 9. I thought this is the thread of the century. No one's going to live this down. It was off the front page of Net 54 in like 3 days.
Dave, they get a pass no matter what they do.
But anyway,
all right, here's another question for you guys. In the same sort of comparison that people try to make, people get paintings cleaned and retouched and make them look like they were intended. So why can't someone do the same thing with cards? Why is it different, John?
Well, for me, art and cards are different in a big way because there's only one piece of art, and number one, you're gonna know it's restored. I mean, those things are highly publicized, and there's only one. So if some kid goes, a group of kids go and throw red paint all over the Mona Lisa in the name of climate change, of course you're going to restore the Mona Lisa. It's the only one. And so I get I understand, like if you have an old Hannes Wagner, that, yeah, you want to maybe clean it up. I get that argument. But the thing is the reason that we have grading and the reason people are willing to pay more for baseball cards is that there's thousands of them out there, but maybe only very few are in top condition. But now we could take the other 1,000 and turn them into top condition, because I'm convinced that these card care kits can get at least 2 more grades on every single card they touch. And modern cards, I'm convinced that they could turn any card, 99.9% of them, unless they come out with, damage, into a 10. And so
the difference for you is that a work of art is a one of a kind, and a card there are thousands of. So what if we use the example instead of
what's special about cards? What is distinguished them is, and why do people pay all this money for 9s and 10s is because that's an exceptional example of the 1,000 that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Which is totally doesn't equate to art at all.
So what if the comparison were books, which are also collectible, which are also restored, or comic books, either, a first edition of some Moby Dick or something? Would that would you, if you were to compare it there, is it different, or how is it different?
Well, I'm not a book collector, but I've watched Pawn Stars, and that woman always she could pull out if it's not
Yeah.
the original or if it's glued back together, and she makes that price go way down. And as
Right.
far
No,
as
I
comic books,
remember
this has
her.
been accepted in comic books, and I can't think of anything dumber than to grade a comic book. You can never look at it, ever.
Yeah. Good
You just
point,
have a
Dave.
cover.
Dave, how do you think that getting a book or a painting restored is different than getting a card restored?
No, I don't think it's the same thing. I mean, you saw that there was a Wagner, I think, this summer, either at Mile High or Memory Lane, and there was only like 60% of the card left. And it got restored into a full looking card, and it looked, in my eyes, fantastic. And I think that that is absolutely great. I'm not for going behind the scenes and building up corners or micro trimming stuff. That's not, I'm not for that, because that's done. If that's done for deceit, I'm all against it. But if I've had cards restored. My Joe Jackson is torn in half. Guess what? Now it sells for $25,000 in an altered holder.
Yes, and everybody knows it's altered.
So, Dave, one of the questions,
I have cards that are in holder, and I want to buy cards that I can't otherwise afford, unless they're in just a crap ass dog one. Yeah. That have at some point been altered. There's no island for misfit cards like there is for misfit toys on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and I don't believe they're worthless or shouldn't be in people's collections. I want it to be in my collection.
I have two things. Number one, your Joe Jackson may sell for a fortune because it has such a great story to go with it. It has that provenance. But I wanted to ask you, so the Hannes Wagner that was missing, that was cut in half. What do? They add
they created a great proportion of the card. Now you have a whole Hannes Wagner that's clearly been restored, but
yeah,
I don't know. It's better than a little postage stamp left of Hannes Wagner if it's
better
than collection.
No Hannes Wagner, yeah.
And I can't remember how much it sold for.
Dave, I've got to ask you something about the Joe Jackson. This was actually one of the questions that was asked to present to you, and I think everybody deserves to know. What did you do to your girlfriend to get her to rip that card in half?
I honestly don't remember, but I'm sure it was I'm going to throw it out there. It was definitely my fault. I guarantee it. Whatever pissed her off, I deserved whatever I got.
Now, John, question.
Nobody deserves that.
This question's for both of you, but I want to ask John first. If you, John, got a Kurtz card care kit sent to your house, what would you do with it?
I'll tell you what, I probably would throw it away because I'm not very artistic and I would just screw up my cards. And I have no intention of altering any of them.
Dave, what would you do with it? Well, I don't know anything about Kurtz cards. John sent me a video of was that a Cy Young or was that a green Cobb?
Cy Young.
Cy Young. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know anything about it, but I've seen some videos where I don't know, wrinkles improve with humidification process. I don't know. I don't know. All I know is you get a bottle of solution that says Kurtz Care on it, and you get a couple little sticks that are as good as your fingernail for whatever you do, pressing or removing dots of dirt. So my question to you is, what's wrong with that? I cannot believe that there's anything in that solution that's going to harm a card. And the reason is, if you get a bottle of solution and little Billy comes in from the snow and goes up to his room with Kurtz card solution and he squirts it in his brother's eye, or his little brother gets it and drinks half of it, who's the call to? There's nothing on that bottle labeled. And if there's anything that needs an SDS sheet that could be even potentially an irritant, it better be listed on that bottle, or when little Jimmy drinks part of it, Kurt's going to be hearing from a lot of attorneys. So unless he's a moron, there better not be anything in there but water and something extraordinarily benign if it's not on the label.
So what would you do with the kit if it showed up at your house?
Well, I wouldn't use it because I just don't. I don't mess with cards, and I don't like it because I have soaked some T206s off stuff. I've soaked them in water, then put them between press and see if I could improve it. This is, I don't know, like 13 years ago, and I had some good results. But I also put like a coupon Mathewson in water, and it just completely ruined it. So I don't want to mess. I personally don't want to mess with stuff, and I've never sent a card anywhere for anybody else to mess with it. With that being said, just because I don't do it, if I buy a card and I found out it was dirty and now it's not dirty, I don't have a problem with it. But personally, I wouldn't do anything. I would not mess.
Was that a T213 you ruined?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that makes me sick.
So last night
it ruined it. It took the sheen off it, and it.
So let me ask you this, because I've never used these solutions. I don't know. I've never used distilled water. So when you use that, you can't tell at all, because when we were little, if you spilled a little something on your card, it gets a little. You could tell it got a little wet.
The thing
so
that
how can you dip it and you can't tell? Do you know?
Because you can't. And I'm not an expert on this. I've done it a few times, but I've read a lot on it, and it's openly done. And to be honest with you, it's openly accepted to soak cards. But essentially, you have to immerse the whole card. You can't put a part of this little wrinkle area or dirty area in water. You have to put the whole card in for X amount of time, and I have no idea what that is. And then while it's in water, you could use a little Q-tip, and if it's got dirt on it, just gradually kind of wipe on it, and the dirt comes off.
Yeah, I know. If you dropped you were drinking something and just one drop would drop on it, it gets that little bubble. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, I think that after you clean cards like that, you're supposed to put them in between a couple absorbent blotters, put a little pressure on that so that doesn't happen till they dry.
Dave, you're turning this into a how-to.
I know. Well, I've read a lot. Over the years.
So, John,
it's like I say, it's been around a long time.
Yeah.
John, I just heard Dave say it's openly accepted to soak cards, quote unquote. What do you think of that? Because earlier I thought you said that was altering cards.
Well, I don't think that that's openly accepted. I think it's openly done, and I think it's becoming more accepted. And I think the people that are trying to, get the tens and make that bank, yeah, it's totally accepted among them. Now, I can tell you from comments on my videos that I would say the vast majority of my viewers don't think that that's acceptable. I'm not saying whether it should or shouldn't be, but I'm telling you what I hear.
Now, when I was going through a lot of the comments on the video that I posted in August on this, I was going through them over the last couple of days, just kind of where does everybody stand? It was kind of like color added, pretty much everyone said it's not okay. Trimming, pretty much everyone said it's not okay. Soaking was the first place that it started to kind of shift a little bit. And then pressing down a corner was a greater. So like Dave, you mentioned your continuum of, from acceptable to not acceptable. Where do you see soaking? If trimming and color adding is way over here, and wiping an eyelash, I think you said earlier, is way over here, where is soaking? Is it closer to the eyelash, or is it closer?
Yeah. You
So
can pretend it's not common, but probably 3/4 of your cards have been soaked. I mean, it's very, very common, and it's very, very accepted. It's water. It's H2O, and it gets off some surface grime and stuff like that. And again, it sounds like I'm a guy that's in the back room doing that. Again, I have put a card underwater literally in, I think, 12 years or so. And that's when I messed up that one card. And I was like, well, this is stupid. But it's just
which is why
nobody wants dirty cards. People, come on! Don't you live in an age where 1970 Cookie Rojas at a PSA 10 goes for $10,000, people, and in an 80 it goes for 75 cents. Why do you think people are doing this?
Having a little potato chips, grease on your dandies, or little Cracker Jack spot, you know, from the Cracker Jacks on your Cracker Jack cards, because they probably came out of the box that way. You know, it gives it a little nuance.
That's
but
why,
in
the
modern world,
I would much rather have Cracker Jack stains on 2015s than ones that were sent out from the factory, or they have those white borders. I don't like those. I like them dirty, but that doesn't mean I want all my cards dirty. I mean, I want them to look nice.
No, I'm with you.
Dave, if you soak a card, should that be disclosed when you sell it? That's the question in the chat.
No.
John, should it be disclosed if a card has been soaked?
You know, the thing is, like, if I was to do that, personally, I would. But the thing is you'll never know, because it'll pass. You know, I saw a post today where somebody has cards on the way to them that they're already selling. We live in a world where that thing's going to pass through 3 hands. And so you're never going to know. I mean, let's just be realistic about it.
Yeah, I'm agree with him. I just off the cuff said no, but that's not really what I mean, because I don't really believe that you should be doing things to cards and then selling them without disclosing. I don't believe that. I just don't find that cleaning a card with water does any harm at all, and I personally wouldn't want to care. I don't want to buy a card and see this pedigree that, you know, in 1922 it was out in the sunlight too long, and in 1924 there was a little jelly on it that they wiped off real quick, and you know, 2 years ago, you know, I had it in my back pocket. I don't care. What's the card look like now? Is it real? Is it, you know? I just want to make sure that it's not horribly altered. Little things like that. That if you roll down the corner, I don't care. I don't care.
Dave, it goes back to the common theme that if you don't know, and you know, PSA grades it, then you don't know. You can't be upset. You can't be affected. Everybody's happy. The guy who altered it and got the grade is making the bank. PSA's making the upcharge on the higher grade, and whoever buys it is happy as a lark because they don't know anything.
Yeah. Well, here's a comment. So it should definitely be disclosed.
It's a victimless
It should definitely
crime.
be disclosed. Which it's just nonsense. It should definitely be disclosed. Should it definitely be disclosed when you send a card to PSA and it gets a 3 and you send it back in because you don't get that and it gets a 4? You sell it and disclose that it was a 3 at one point? Bull.
Right. Nobody's going to do that.
I listened to another podcast, popular podcast, and there was a popular YouTuber on there. And here we go. I'm going to go there. And I stopped listening to it because I didn't want my thoughts contaminated, but he sent in to PSA in 1986 Jordan, and it came back altered. So he sent it to SGC and it came back a 4, and there's grins all around and high fives. What? That's almost, I don't know. That's almost like, who cares who altered it? Someone said, your grading company, the #1 grading company, the biggest grading company, the most trusted, that never be cheated, told you that this is altered, but you wanted another opinion. So let's go to this place to see if they'll have it. Oh, they say it's not altered? Yeah, I'm going with that one.
So John,
it's not another opinion.
Don't tell me that soaking should definitely be when every single one in the audience out there is cracking out cards, getting higher grades, and not disclosing to anybody that there was once a lower grade on that.
Right.
Last night, John, you were on with Mike Petty, who's a longtime commenter.
I am being devil's advocate part here. I mean, that was part of my shtick, right? The devil on the shoulder. So I don't want to come off as being this bad guy, because I could sit here and just me and John agree on everything, to be honest with you, but I'm at least trying to put out some different opinions.
Sure.
Even if they're not truly all mine, they're somebody's, and they should be listened to.
And we could disagree on everything if we tried too.
Right. Yeah.
So John, when you were on last night with Mike Petty, he said anybody who uses Kurt's Card Care is committing fraud. Do you think it's fraud to use Kurt's Card Care?
So when it comes to restoration for me, or alteration, it's about the intent, right? So like I said, it's icky, right? It's like if I see some guy in a park and he's offering candy to a little kid, I don't know what his intent is, but it sure feels icky to me. And so this whole thing just feels icky to me. I don't know. That's about as articulate as I can say.
Sure. And you don't think that Kurt's card here is fraud, is that right, Dave?
I don't know what it is. I'm not for it. I'm just not. I'm not for the community going down the pathway of more creative ways of improving cards. I guess I'll say I'm just not for that at all. But we're far enough down that path that it is part of the hobby now. I thought in 2019 there was going to be changes. You know, when there's FBI agents at the national, blah, blah, blah. It's been 5 years. Nothing has happened. These people are still selling cards. They're still submitting to the TBGs, and they're still setting up tables at our major card shows, and nothing has happened. So I don't believe anything's going to happen. And therefore, the people see, wait a minute, that major shit was going down. We watched it on Blowout. We watched it everywhere. Big time things. It's all over. And nothing happened, so they're putting their foot in the door. It happened, and it's happening.
I just wanted to go back to expound upon my my answer that it's all about the intent, really, for me. And so, you know, I believe that 99% of the people that are using this stuff are, you know, trying to obviously get over on PSA, improve, like buy a 6, turn it into a 9. Send it into PSA, and there's a lot of scammers and a lot of bad actors in this industry today, more so than ever. I know everybody says, "Oh, there's always been." There certainly have been, but since the boom, I think they're coming out of the woodwork now. And so, my problem is, you know, there's a lot of scammers using these things and trying to get over on people. And it's like if I write a pamphlet on how to make a bomb, and a terrorist gets a hold of that and does something, well, I'm not the terrorist, right? You can't blame me. It's freedom of speech. I can write that book. But what I did do was enable that terrorist to do something. And I feel like, you know, these card care kits are enabling and making it easier for the scammers.
Okay, I got a point here. And I'm kind of regretting that I'm coming off as the bad guy here, because someone had to take the stand for fun, because these are not on my view. But Mike Petty.
So what are some of the views that
Mike Petty just put up a definition of fraud? Can you put that back up?
You got it. It's coming up in just a sec here. There you go.
What crime has been committed? Where is there a crime in this? What is the crime? Let me see you go before a jury and tell them, yeah, this guy's trimming cards and making them look better, and they're going to the biggest graders and card authorities in the world, and they say that they're just fine, but it upsets us a lot, so we'd like to bring a lawsuit. What's the crime there? Is the crime, what is the crime?
There's no crime, but there may be a victim.
I'm just pointing at fraud, and it mentions criminal deception. What is the crime?
Yeah.
What if the word criminal was not included?
We have very little oversight.
Yeah, I'm just going back and forth. I don't believe what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is,
PSA fined when they
what is the crime?
Wagner, and it sold for all that money?
Or, yeah. You know, who's the victim? Is the victim the guy that one time had $1,000 card? Now he's going to the judge crying that it's now worth $4,000. You're going to tell that to a jury? Yeah, I'm a victim of a crime. This card was worth $1,000. Now it's worth $4,000. Where's the crime?
You know what?
It's ethics.
He just won.
It's more of an ethical question, and ethically, I'm against it all. Other than I really don't mind some gentle cleaning with water. Ethically, you know, I think it's a huge problem.
So, what about if we find out that a card was soaked or altered? So let's just take the example of the card that Orlando talked about last night, where it was soaked and then it was enslabbed, and then the stain started coming back, and now it clearly seems as if it was altered depending on some people's definition. Should PSA or the grading company, SGC, whoever it is, should they be held liable for grading a card that had alterations that got past them, or should it just be the buyer beware, as you said in your video, John.
Well, there's a victim there, right? You end up years later. Do you get your money back? No. Should PSA be held accountable? No, because I don't think they're the experts everybody thinks they are. And if somebody got over on them, you know, theoretically, they get paid to grade. They get paid to catch this stuff. But sometimes maybe it's impossible. I don't know. But whoever did that to the card is the true, you know, fraudster.
If a person did a fake autograph, then PSA authenticated it, and then it was found out later that it was fake, you don't think that PSA should be held responsible?
I don't, because I don't put that much faith in them. I see autographs slabbed all the time that I don't believe are real.
Yeah.
But if you know, people put too much trust in them, and all the grading companies, they just put too much trust. Autographs, I mean, they have to be the hardest thing to authenticate.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think that we can take out of what to do, because one of my questions was, okay, John, I think you agree with a lot of people that there's a lot of stuff going on, and that's a problem with the hobby. And so my question is, like, if you were to be in charge of PSA and knowing there's a lot of alterations that are happening and some are getting through, what would you do as head of PSA to catch more of that? Because like you said, you don't think they're the professionals that they claim to be, and they're not the or I think you said experts. They're not the experts that they claim to be. What do you think they should be doing that they're not doing?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if maybe it's impossible to detect these things, but you know, I'm not the one out there going, I send it to me and pay me, and I can tell you that if it's altered or not. I'm not the one making that claim.
Do you think then it doesn't seem like they should be held responsible since they are making that claim?
Maybe, but we always want to blame everybody, but the person who's pulling over on them is the true fraudster. Because what I'm saying is, maybe you can't tell. And if maybe you can't tell at the time, like in the Orlando instance, but then a year later, it comes back. You know, PSA, and you see it all the time. You'll see a Kellogg's card in a PSA 10 with a big crack, sometimes multiple cracks. And you think it's a joke. Like, is this a fake slab? Did PSA screw this up? But it cracked after it was slabbed, probably because they flattened it out too fast, something like that, or over time. You know, the Baseball Hall of Fame will not accept, when people donate them cards, they will not accept graded cards because they don't know what the long-term effects of a card being in that plastic will have archivally, right? Is that a word, archivally? So the archival concerns, they have archival concerns. Well, what are the concerns when you're putting all this stuff all over a card? You know, maybe does it take 1 year to show up? Does it take 2, 3, 4, 5, or does it never show up? I don't know the answer to that, because I think this phenomenon, at least in a big way, is newer, and I don't know if we've been at it long enough to know. I mean, like Orlando has that one we keep referring to. So how many others are out there like that residue came back and it, you know, dimmed or faded?
So, John, Mike Petty asked, do you think PSA is a scam?
I shouldn't say PSA. I think all grading is.
You think all grading companies are a scam?
To a certain extent. And the funny thing, you know, everybody always says, well, I do that because it's peace of mind. And that's out the friggin' window. There's no peace of mind in this hobby anymore, and it gets worse every day.
Dave, where do you stand on grading companies? Do you think they're pretty trustworthy, or do you think a lot's getting through?
Well, I think they're probably doing the best that they can, and I think things get through, and that I don't think that they should be expected to detect. I mean, that's what I want to hear from them is, yes, we see that this is happening, and what you got to go to the source. Forget about the cards. What's done is done. How are you tracking down and vetting some of these submitters? Or, you know, you get this batch of 100 cards with consecutive things, and guess what? 25 of them you did detect as altered. Pin that guy. Get some investigation going. I don't think that there's anything like, forget about the cards. I think that you need to try to hone in on the submitters. I don't think grading is a scam at all. I mean, the part of it's a scam. I mean, I laugh at some of it. I mean, it's a scam that I have to pay 50 times the amount of money because I got a nice red heart I'm sending in versus a crappy red heart. Well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in the world, that you're charging me $700 to grade that card, but the one next to it that has a little wrinkle of it, you're charging $25. It's just stupid. It's as stupid as their scam with the registry. I mean, they got to be just laughing at that.
It's really
talk
stupid.
About getting people to trim cards, and talk about people that'll grade their, 72 Lou Pinellas because it's in some sort of a set, or that Mike Payne thinks it's a great card, so everybody's grading cards that they would never grade. They love it. That's the scam part of it. It's the registry that, I'm not a registry person. I've been on the registry, but it's just, they got that cooking. I mean, that's what you think of PSA, you think of the registry, and they're like, what other category can we think of that's going to make people slab with our company? That's what that's the scam. And I cannot believe that people don't see it.
To me, if any part of it's a scam, then it's all a scam. Now, listen to this. If you order cable at your house, you have a $1 million house, and I have a $300,000 house, and we both order cable from AT&T. When the cable guy shows up at your house, does he upcharge you because you have a nicer house? Like, it's absurd.
It's absolutely crazy. Let me ask you a question here. This is another thing that I think about alterations and grading. If I'm going to take your take a card, and I'm going to get out my number 2 pencil and draw a mustache on your 40 play ball Ted Williams, and I send it into PSA, what are they going to give it? Altered or a mark?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
I've seen them with marks. I've seen probably.
But if I get that mustache play ball, and I get
and you erase it, it's going to be altered.
Yeah, and I get I take away Jim, Billy's pencil mark he did. I get myself a nice artist white eraser, and I take it. All of a sudden, it's an altered card.
Yeah.
What? I mean,
it should be altered if the mustache is written on it. I don't grade, so I don't know. So, but I would think that.
Well, I think if you draw a mustache in a card, it should. I mean, that seems to be altered. I don't know why putting a pinhole through isn't something in altering. You put a pinhole in it, it gets a 1. You use your fingernail to press that edge back over to kind of cover it up. It's still a pinhole, but now it's all of a sudden altered. Huh? I mean, come on now. The whole thing it's this huge gray area that's ridiculous. I just think that I'm against fraud. I know John's against fraud, but I'm a little different on the continuum. I don't mind gently cleaning off some cards with some water, although I don't do it. And I would have no problem buying it if they said, and I would not expect anybody, for God's sakes, to disclose that they cleaned off some dirt with their fingernail or a dowel rod or whatever. Like, who cares? I mean, that's my thought. I think if you think otherwise, you're really being probably hypocritical. That we could look at your cards and see where you squeezed down a corner, or a little spittle came out of your mouth and you wiped it off. Let's be real here.
I would rather not know, Dave, because ignorance is bliss, like I said.
Yeah,
if I knew, every time I looked at that card, it would bother me. Like I'd know it was tampered with. So I'd rather just not know.
Yeah. So you remember that 69 Clemente I had, Topps Clemente? I had it in a PSA 9, and I love that card, and that's a beautiful card. But I got in the 2019 PWCC thing, all of a sudden PWCC sent me a letter saying, hey, that card may be altered.
Yeah.
So I, being a good boy, said, well, I have a card that at some point it must be altered. It's going to end up in someone's collection. So I better do the right thing and send it back to them. And I got my money back. So I got my $1,200 back, and I guarantee that card's now it's like a $5,000 card. But I kind of wonder what the heck happened to that.
Yeah.
What happened to that card? It was going to go to the old FBI. What happened with that? I mean,
Now, Dave, let me ask you something, because it wasn't that long ago, and I don't remember which channel it was that John was asked, and somebody asked him, would you rather have a really poor copy of a card, or would you rather have an altered copy of the card?
Yeah.
And he kind of was like, well, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but you kind of said, well, I kind of don't really like either choice, but if it was really, really bad, like I think you called it like a bulldozer or like a car truck ran over it type versus the altered, you go, I think I guess I'd choose the altered, but it seemed close. Now, Dave, in your video where you initiated all this, you said this year in 2024, you're going to be targeting cards that have been labeled altered authentic. So why are you targeting cards that are labeled altered authentic?
Well, that was a little bit of bravado and drama. It's not like I'm out to buy altered cards, okay? So that was just fault of my schnick trying to get John into this conversation. I'm not against. I got a nice Graig DeLong that looks like a 8 or 9, and it measures up fine, but it's in an altered holder. I would not dream of taking it out to try to see if someone else will think otherwise. It is what it is. Cards like that I do not want a DeLong that looks like it's been run over by a car. I would rather not have the card. I would rather have the authentic. However, that being said, I'm going for the E98 Mathieson color run. I have the Cobb, and I'm still need the red and the orange, and those come up very, 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 very rarely. But I've seen them come up, and I've seen them come up that are in just too crappy a condition that I don't want them. But that is a card that I would not want in an authentic condition. I would rather have a very poor condition one that at least has some degree of respectability. So not every card would I say, oh, I'm going to get that in authentic because it's a good card. But I don't think I would get a 33 Gaudy Ruth in authentic. But boy, some of them are in authentic and they look nice. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. There are cards in authentic holders that are worth nearly $100 grand and sell for it. You know, some cards just sold, you know, I think a Cracker Jack Cobb, I don't know, it's a 14 or 15 authentic, just sold in Heritage, and I think it sold for like $45,000. Altered. It's altered, you know, and the green Cobb in an altered sold for like 15,000. So
the thing in an altered is you know what you're getting. You know what you're buying.
Correct. I look at cards and I look at them to see, you know, even if they have numbers on them, I look at them very closely because I don't want my T206s being a little skinny and a little pointy. So even if they have a number on them, I'm looking at them myself. But yeah, I'm not opposed to. There's probably a bunch of cards I could name. Oh, okay, I'll name one. 49 Leaf Page. That I really, 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 really want that card. They're unbelievably expensive in poor condition. We'll say 1. I don't know why we keep saying 1, 2, 3. We really should say very good and whatnot. In poor condition, they're very expensive. But you can, I remember last year there was one that was altered. It had probably been trimmed a little bit and it just looked gorgeous. And it went for a lot of money, but I would rather it had that than a trashed up one for that card. So that's an example. So, but I'm not set in stone. I'm not set in stone. But that's when I say I'm actively looking for, and I did that in a very dramatic way. And I didn't mean that that's all I'm buying, but what I should have said is sheepishly said, I'm not opposed to buying a few altered cards if I can afford it.
Yeah.
Mike Petty last night, he showed us he had a 57 Clemente. I think, and Mike, you could correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. I think it was in a 6, somewhere around there. And he's like, does this look right to you? And I mean, at first glance, it looks off. Like the borders are too thin and it's flopping around in the PSA holder. So how does a card like that get passed? How does it get graded?
Yeah, I don't know how long it takes them to grade a card. There's been this curtain behind PSA, and even as I know that you do these little walkarounds with SGC and show a bunch of guys sitting around the table. You know, we don't know what goes on there. Are they looking at my card for 15 seconds or 10 minutes? Are they really passing it around to 2 to 3 people? Nobody knows. So it's no surprise that cards get through. Look at the millions of cards they get. There's just no way you can really.
But if you look at cards, if you know cards, I mean, that thing just looks off immediately. Like
Now,
if you've never seen a 57 tops before, yeah, you might not know.
I sent you a
and it doesn't
picture
even
of.
fit in a holder.
I sent a picture to you the other day, John, of a T205, and I go, "Doesn't this look weird to you?" And you go, "Yeah, it's too skinny." And I'm like, "Exactly." And you
Yeah,
look,
you just get
and
an
in the
instant.
holder, it had a gap on each side, and it's like I see a lot of cards that I think were soaked and that I think were trimmed and I think are fake autographs, and I'm like, even though it's a card I want in a range I can afford, I'm like, I don't want that one because it just gives me the creeps.
It just
Yeah,
doesn't
there's
feel
a lot of
feel
cards
good.
that I
Now, it's
see that I would
possible.
like that look good that I'm like, man, that just it's a little bat wing down there. Something just doesn't look right about it, even if it has a number.
I pass on cards all the time like that. Back to that T205. I mean, it's not like they had laser printing back then. It's possible that actually was cut that way, but it definitely doesn't look like all the ones I have. You know, it doesn't
Well, I
look
mean,
right.
even if you take a bunch of 56 tops cards and you stack them up, it's not locked perfectly. There's a little gap in the sizes. Versus if you took a bunch of 2022 Prism cards, they're like perfect, same exact size.
Right.
So there is a margin for error, which I think the Evan Mathis video points out. Well, those are the cards you buy, the bigger ones, because then you can take off a little piece, is kind of what he was getting at. And some of the cards we see with rough cuts, I actually really like rough cut cards because I know they weren't messed with.
I do
would be
too.
really,
That's wrong.
What's wrong?
Those trimmers have mastered the rough cut.
Do you think that they've
rough
cut?
Yes.
Do you think a rough cut is a trimmed card?
No, I think that these trimmers have ways of making a card appear rough cut.
How? Okay, I've
How
not
do they
seen
do
that
it?
video.
I don't know, but I've seen proof of it. It's another way of hooking people in. Oh, it's got a rough cut. It must be good. But they create the rough cut.
You know, why do you think
how they do that? I don't know, but I've seen proof of that.
John, you've said something a few times, and I totally agree. I've seen the same thing. I feel like a lot of people doing their PSA reveals are getting minimum size requirements a lot. And then those cards are going over to SGC and they're getting through. What do you think? What do you hypothesize is going on there? Why are PSA rejecting more cards, and why is SGC not? I have a guess. I want to hear what yours is. Too. Yeah.
And I know nothing. It's just a guess. I think they're implementing AI, and it is so precise that it is triggering these things as being not the right size. That's my guess, that it's just so precise. Some technology they're using, because it's just happening way too often these days. And, you know, in the old days, well, throughout most of the vintage cards, they weren't all exactly precisely down to the, I don't even, millimeter. I don't even know the finite measurement to say, but that's my thought. That's my guess.
That is my thought as well. And does that mean you think SGC is using different software or not using that software?
I don't think they are there yet. They're probably not using that.
It just seems interesting because, like last night,
I heard the PSA was using AI already.
Yeah.
Not to its full effect.
They bought a
company. Kind of like 5G. I think
it's 5G. It's called Gemamint or Genamint or something. They bought them and have said, they've admitted that they're implementing them. I just think that I'm with you. And I heard last night Sammy was saying on your talk that he was checking a card to make sure it was the right size with a ruler. And a ruler is obviously not nearly going to be nearly as exact as an AI software. And so I'm with you. My dad, who was a big 59 and 60 set collector, had very high grade sets of both. He just carried around a couple of commons. So before he paid up for the mantle, he just took the card out, put it up against his example to make sure it was the right size. And it's very simple to see if a card is the right size. You don't need a ruler.
That's the way I do it, because you could see the other card behind it if it's trimmed.
Exactly. Now,
I mean, but some of these guys are apparently so good that the grading companies can't detect it. If they can't detect it, I probably can't.
yeah, I mean, the fact that they're not detecting some of it is certainly
Except for that 57 Clemente. That's like beat you over the head.
Now, John,
Hobby.
another thing I've heard you say a lot lately, because anytime you guys put stuff out, I always watch it. And Dave just doesn't put stuff out as much as I wish he did. But John, you've said a few times, with all this happening, it's made you want to leave the hobby. And I don't believe that's going to happen. I think you're kind of tongue in cheek, and it's your way of saying this is really aggravating that this is where we're at. What about the whole thing? What part of it is the most aggravating for you?
I'll tell you what, you're right. I mean, it's just aggravation. But when I say that, I don't mean like I'm going to stop collecting. I mean, I just want to leave the hobby. Like the hobby has gone to shit. There's just so much crap that goes on. And
this is why I threw down the gauntlet. This is a type of rant.
Like
this is why we're
itself,
here. You wanted to know why we're here. This is why we're here.
I used to collect.
You couldn't drag this guy out of the hobby with 12 horses, yet he's pretending like he's going to leave it. Yeah, okay, well, go ahead.
No, the thing is, I used to collect in obscurity, and I was happy as a lark. I had my cards. I didn't have to see everybody judging what the grade is on it or anything, and I don't have to worry about, all the scammers and everything. Maybe I did. Maybe I was just oblivious. But, the other day I posted a card, and there's only like 16 of them in existence. And I don't know why, like these kind of comments piss me off. Somebody commented, why did it get a 2? Do you think is it off-centered? And I'm like, dude, there's 16 of these in existence. I'm thrilled to have this. You're looking at the goddamn 2 on it? Like, seriously? It's so, like, when you post a card on Facebook, in a Facebook group or something, you post a 9 and somebody will be like, here's mine. And they'll post a 10, like to outdo you. Even Baseball Collector has those battles where they go by the grade on the card. And, so that kind of drives me crazy that people because we collect those numbers now instead of cards. And there's this big movement where you could have a 7 and I can have a 4, and my 4 looks twice as good as your 7. And so there's this movement where people are paying up for lower graded, centered, good eye appeal cards. So just because PSA put that 7 on it and I have a 6 doesn't mean yours is nicer or mine's nicer. You know what I'm saying? Like, but there's so much emphasis on that number that it takes away from the cards. It just takes away from the cards, and it just drives me insane.
Now, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping real quick. Just, the chat is going wild, and I'm doing my best to put as much stuff up as I can. We're at 159 people in the chat right now, which is really high. The peak that I saw was 164. So they're obviously very interested in what you guys have to say. What is your take on grading numbers, and has the number become too important, Dave? Do you agree with John on that, or are we going to find the devil Dave on that shoulder from your pitch?
Well, I think those that live in, if you're not there, you're not there. But if you live in the pre-war world, number means nothing, not much. I think maybe on some of the 30, 34, 33, 34 Gaudis, whatnot, but on pre-war cards, it's eye appeal. And on post-war cards, it's the number, and the eye appeal helps. And then in modern cards, it's strictly the number. I mean, it is just the number. We're talking about looking at cards with artificial intelligence and computers. I am glad I don't live in that world. That is ridiculous. How can you have fun or sleep at night worrying that that your card is being looked at with an electron microscope? Practically, it's ridiculous. And that's why I'm not upset about this. I'm glad I'm not living in a world that's going to be dominated by Big Brother fanatics. I don't live in that world at all. It's going to affect me none. I think that a lot of people are going to be severely adversely affected in this hobby, and it's going to be a problem. You don't want a monopoly on anything.
Nope.
But with me, I like numbers. I mean, listen, I like numbers on my mammal run, but I don't really care about the number on my hot dog issues, my Stallmeyers and whatnot. So it goes from card to card, but generally in
let me ask
pre-war,
you this.
I just want something that looks nice, and I know it's going to be on a 1 or a 2, and it looks nice. That's fantastic for me.
Go ahead,
and
John.
I want a 49, and I want a 49 leaf page, and I don't care what the number is as long as it looks pretty good, as long as the registration is pretty good. I don't care if it's off center. Couldn't care less. I just don't want his lips over here on his cap, and so I don't really care about the number on pre-war cards at all.
Well,
John,
the
go
ones
ahead.
you do, the ones you do care about a number. If you got a mint on the label instead of a 9, would that just be no good?
With me?
I mean, it's the same thing. You're just not given a number.
Are you
If you
talking
got
to
mint? Yeah. You like the 9? I mean, if it said mint, would you not like it as much as if it said 9?
I have this Albert Pujols rookie autograph card that was graded by GAI, and you know what they graded it? The word printed on there is perfect. I don't know what that means, but it says perfect.
Yeah.
I'm into the post-war. I'm into it enough that I care about with my collection, with my PC collection. I do care about the condition significantly. Now, that doesn't mean that I would rather have a great-looking 7 than a lesser appeal 8. I'll take the 7. I do not live by the numbers for sure, but you have to realize the higher numbers mean better aesthetics and better condition. That's just a fact. So I do live in some of these 50s, 60s cards in that higher realm because
it doesn't necessarily mean better aesthetics. It definitely better technical condition. Sure.
Every time a PSA 7 or 8 is better than a 4.
I disagree.
99,000 out of 99,001 times, your 7's going to look better than
I disagree. A 7 could be totally off center. It can have a mark on the fisheye or whatever, some blemish on it. And I've seen I have a 4 1962. I have 2 1962 Clementes. One's a 7 and one's a 4. I can't tell them apart. They look identical to me. They both look beautiful. The 4
There's exceptions. There's exceptions. There's exceptions. I mean, yeah.
Back to the modern. When I started to see people opening packs of brand new, perfect condition cards and sending them into PSA, like, opening a box and sending $10,000 to PSA or $2,000 or whatever immediately. I thought it was the dumbest way to spend your money I had ever heard of. When grading came out, these cards have been around for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years. It makes sense. They were handled. They were used. We're pulling these things out. They're just, unless they're damaged or you drop one. I mean, like you said, it's AI. You can't tell the difference with the human eye. And let me tell you something, PSA can't tell the difference either. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to crack and resubmit and get a totally different grade at such a high percentage. What are your thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I'm looking at your question. Can a PSA 4 ever look better than
that
a
was?
PSA? I mean, that's an obvious yes. But
okay.
Whatever we were talking about, you were talking about numbers, and in general, if you're talking about 50s and 60s top cards in 7 or 8s, they're going to look a lot better than your lower numbers. I mean, if we can't agree on that, we can agree on nothing. I mean, there will be exceptions, of course, but
I can't agree on that because I've seen some shit-looking 7s, man, and 6s. I really have. I saw a Bob Gibson 4 that was missing a corner, 4.5, missing a corner. I saw a 1933 Tattoo Orbit Dizzy Dean that I wouldn't buy. I waited for a better one because it had a lower left corner missing, and it was a 6. So I disagree. I mean, if they
I said there's
graded
okay.
if they
I
graded
don't
them
know.
accurately, if they always graded them accurately, I might agree with you. If they always did that, but they don't, and they don't a lot, in my opinion.
So we agree that there are definitely exceptions. I mean, Dave, where do you when you one thing that came up earlier, a lot of people mentioned, I didn't throw anything on there, and it's kind of popped up again. Where do you stand then on the OCs and the qualifiers? Like a 7 OC versus a 4. Does the eye appeal, because you said pre-war eye appeal matters. How about post-war OCs versus, because I'm with you. I mean, if we're talking about an 1888 card, and just having it is amazing. So being OC, whatever. But if we're talking about it, go ahead.
I don't think I have hardly any cards that have qualifiers on them. I don't really care for the OC. I don't like those. I don't mind. A card doesn't have to be perfectly centered for me, but ones that are like enough that they would get a qualifier. I think for post-war cards, it's generally not attractive for me. I mean, some people don't care. I mean, because they came out of the pack that way, and you got that right. They did come out of the pack that way, and it doesn't bother them a bit. But I don't look for if I'm looking for a card, I never would buy a card that has a qualifier on it personally. But there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, nothing wrong at all. I mean, probably a good way of getting nice cards for good deals. Just because there's a PSA, put a credit qualifier on it. They're telling you, they're pricing it for you.
And so if you're against the quality,
can I answer
go?
That?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I hate qualifiers, man. I'd rather have a letter graded copy. And to his point, I got this 1971 Harman Killebrew, just fantastic condition for next to nothing, because they said it was OC, but I'm like, it doesn't even look OC to me. I mean, it's not perfectly centered, but it doesn't look off to get that designation. I hate the designations. That's why I prefer SGC if I'm gonna have something graded, which I haven't had in a long time.
If you did have something that for whatever reason ended up in your collection with a qualifier, would you just cross it over?
No, because I don't keep sending these guys my money over and over again. I have a few, maybe. I have a few, and I hate them. Maybe at some point I'll do something, but I'm more likely to crack it out and keep it raw, to be honest with you, than send them any more money.
Yeah. Dave, your thoughts? I mean, would you resubmit a card that had a qualifier, or would you just?
I don't. I'm with John. I mean, this resubmitting card is just what a scam.
Total scam.
I mean, the fact that you send them, you trust this company, you love this company, you bow down to this company, and they give you a 4, and you break it out and send it right back because you think it needs a 5, and you get a 3.5, or you do get the 5. I don't know. I'm not on that. Do not want to be on that merry-go-round. So no, I would not. I have only resubmitted a couple cards in my life. One of them is my 49 leaf Jackie that I thought was severely undergraded, and I still do, by PSA. And I think I cracked it out. I can't remember, and sent it in. But otherwise, I'm not into resubmitting. I got a whole bunch of cards that say that are nice cards, that are superstar cards, that say authentic on them, because I presume that they were trimmed or minimum size or something like that. And I'm not sending them back. I don't feel good about that. What happens when I get that back and it's a 4? I'm the scammer. I'm the scammer, because that's going to end up in someone's hands who's going to break it out to SGC, send it to PSA, and PSA is going to again say it's altered. So I don't anything that I get back from a company that says it's altered, and I have, it's been going on a long time. I have a bunch of them that I still have them. I don't resubmit cards, other than I think I did a page, a 49 Bowman page, and the 49 leaf Jackie. Those are the only two that I can think of, other than I still think that my Red Heart Mantle that's in an SGC 9, I sent it back to them twice, telling them this is the perfect card. Is this not? If it's not a 10, it's a 9.5, and they wouldn't bump it. I'll have to admit, felt so strongly about it that, but that's different than sending in a card, breaking out a card that came back altered and sending it to a different company.
What do you think the future is going to hold for the eye appeal versus the grade? I mean, I agree with you, John. I've seen a lot of 4s that I think look better than 7s. You know, Dave admitted that, yeah, in some cases that's probably true. Do you think that if we go forward, that the grade, the value that the hobby, that the buyers put on the number on the card is going to continue to be king? Or do you think at some point people's eyes are going to start to catch up to the grade from the grading company?
Well, I think it's both. I think for collectors like me, we go with eye appeal. But if you're a flipper or you're an investor, you're trying to make that bank, the number's all that matters. That's all that matters to these people. They don't care about the card inside.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the one thing is it's like, and backstage, Dave and I were talking before you came in, John, and one of the things we talked about is it's like, you know, people say, well, I don't care what my cards were worth. I don't care about my collection's value. And Dave's like, how could we not? It's a big portion for a lot of people. It's a big portion of their net worth is tied up in cards. So part of me, when I get a 7 instead of an 8, is like, well, I don't care. The card is still the same card. I love it. But part of me is like, well, someday this could make it less valuable. So are people resubmitting because of the someday? Like,
yeah, but are you trying to get hit that $12 million paycheck? Because I could pretty much assure you that every 7 you had in 2014 is worth a hell of a lot more now. So it did go up in value.
Sure.
I mean, but if you want to play in the realms of, oh, I'm going to flip this $100,000 card and take a risk of it being worth 80 next week or 120 next week, that's a whole different realm. And those aren't collectors doing that. I don't believe those are collectors doing that at all. I believe it's a bunch of people with a lot of money that flip them to each other.
So do we start turning the conversation to the grading companies? I mean, because you both have said in the last couple of minutes that the real scam is the resubmitting, the regrading, the all of that. I mean,
that's a whole other topic. You have another 2 hours?
Hey, well, I mean, I don't have to be at work until about 8 tomorrow morning.
Well,
so
you know what? That is one thing that Dave and I probably disagree on. So that would be a better debate. Because we're pretty much in agreement on restoration and alteration.
Maybe round 2 of the two of you are going to be the grading company situation. I mean, because I know that.
Here's what I will say, just about these top number grades is what's going to happen with them. You know, eye appeal or whatnot. I think what logically should appeal is at some point people are going to realize that there is such a monstrous jump between like a PSA 9 and a PSA 10 that I'm acting like a fool paying these money for 10s.
It's insane.
I'll bring you back to my 1978 Ed Kirkpatrick in a PSA 10 that you're going to pay $10,000 for. Yeah. And in an 8, it's, $1.75.
It's all flexing.
You're an idiot. I'll say it right now. And that's at some point, people have got to be. Does your wife have to slap you around, or when are you going to realize that that's just absolutely nuts? So I think that the huge jump, that cavern between a 9 and a 10, I think that will probably narrow, and I think that people, people get on here and they act like centered cards is some new revelation over the past 2 years.
I know.
I crack up whenever you're talking about centered cards like it's the next coming. My thought, I instantly think you're new to collecting. You can say you've been around for 40 years, you're new to collecting. If you think that centered cards and the importance and the eye appeal is something that's been brand new over the last 5 years, oh my God, no, it's been forever. You know, I mean, centering is been important for a very, very long time. I would say with the internet and whatnot, it has come more to the forefront. I would say that started, I saw it, you know, more chat and pumping, I'll call it, about 15 years ago.
Now,
I want to say something because I want to stand up for my man Dylan, who's a centering junkie, and I've always been that's been the second most important thing to me because I'm mostly about the clarity of the card, the image first, and then I want it centered way more so than corners. But to your point, Dave, yeah, that's always been around. That's always been something we sought. However, I think when grading really started to get big and all the emphasis on the number and the value on the number, I think a lot of the newer collectors were just buying that number more so than they were buying eye appeal. And I think now that they're more seasoned, you know, so this has been the big thing is now they want the centered and the good eye appeal, and numbers not quite as important for the collectors. And that's where Dylan's at right now, because he used to want everything in a 7, and now he's selling the 7s and buying better looking 4s.
You know what's better? You know what's better than a PSA 4 centered card?
A PSA centered 7 centered card?
You know what's better than a PSA 4 centered card?
Yeah, a PSA 7 centered card.
You got that right. Every day of the week. Every day of the week.
So, let me ask you this. First off, 172 people currently in the chat. Has grading gotten harder, Dave?
Well, I don't send money card. I don't know. I don't send cards into grading, but I read a lot, and it has. I think it became this competition that you were a better company if you graded harder. What the hell?
What's up with that?
I mean, we have the standards, the written standards haven't changed, but the reality of the assigned grade has. That seems fraudulent to me. I mean, if you have this written out, and this is what your company was built on, that this is our standards for a 7, yet you send something in like that and you get a 5. Why are people keep doing that? I don't get that at all. That is fraud.
It created the junk slab era.
Yeah,
because now nobody wants the old holders. Now you got to resubmit again, so you get the new holder.
So
I got
and here's a question.
These companies seem to be at some point started competing that they are the tougher grader, and that makes their cards better because they're tougher. So if it's an 8 in an SGC or a PSA and it's a blah blah blah, they're a tougher grader. So I bet you it's a better card.
I want to ask you,
like I say, at what point you hold up the card, you measure the card, you may blacklight the card, you look at the card. 5th grader could do that. I mean, I'm honest with you. I mean, we don't need 100 power microscopy to look at a baseball card. You just don't. At that point, it becomes ridiculous. It really does. It becomes ridiculous. And all this AI and all this stuff, I think they've gotten beyond what they really want to be and what grading should be. And that's, is it an authentic card? Is it been altered? And what's really the fair condition of that card? That's pretty simple. You know, that's just what it should be. And they got into this competition where it's beyond that, and that we're not passing out 9s. We're the toughest grader. And I think people are being cheated by that.
Now, if the grading standards are different and they've changed and they're harder, and even though on paper they haven't changed, but in reality, I think a lot of people would say that they think that they've changed. Doesn't that kind of make all grades irrelevant, Dave?
It does. It's arbitrary, for one. Between grader and grader, you send it in a 4, it comes back, you send it to a different grader, says it's a 4.5. Then that grader is grading differently than he did 5 years ago. 10 years ago, they graded completely different. They've completely just walked off the plank with this. And so I don't know. I mean, things aren't so bad where now an 8, you know, back in the day, an 8 today would get a 4. We're not there yet. but I don't even know why they even want to approach that. I mean, have some integrity with your written standards that you post on your website and that you've been standing by for close to 30 years. You know,
I want to
put that
ask
in your
you this,
chest and pretend that's, you know, that those parameters don't matter.
Go ahead, John.
So you had a card graded in 2001, which is now a junk slab. You send it in for a regrade, they assign it the same grade, right? They don't regrade it, they reslab it because they have to stand behind what they have. So now you're going to have new slabs that are bogus. I mean, is right? Because they wouldn't grade it that way if you send it in
Let's, you know, people say that old slabs aren't enough. Let's just say I have my 51 Bowman mantle is in a very old slab. So theoretically, if I would sell that, there's people that would say, oh, that's, you know, 2002 standards. That's probably really only a 4. I'm not going to bid.
Right.
So my answer to that is to send it to PSA to put it in a lighthouse holder, so that I'll fool everybody to think, hey, it's in a brand new holder. And even though it's got the same cert, it's just,
well,
look at
not
the
everybody,
card.
Not everybody
Look at the
that
card. If you look at my card and you don't think it's a 5, fine. Quit staring at the number and what the cert is, and be judge of the card yourself a little bit.
I think that the fact that PSA. So here's my take. This is I don't understand this. This is to me fraud. I understand why they're willing to re-slab a card that you send in to be re-slabbed. My thing is, why are you changing the flip? Why are you changing the label? The grade didn't change. The serial number didn't change. Nothing changed. But by changing the flip to the new flip, that to me is sketch, because there's no reason to do that. The only reason you'd re-slab a card is because the slab was scratched up, right? So why aren't they just putting the old slip in, the old flip, instead of doing it on the new lighthouse one? I know. Well, we want it to match. We want it to match.
I'm not a PSI guy, but I think that there are holographic differences and security, whether it's barcode or whatnot. There are some security differences within the label.
Couldn't they slap it on there?
Huh?
Couldn't they slap something on there on the existing flip? Because part of the problem is the serial numbers are not all sequential. Now we're in an era right now where they are all sequential. You see one that starts with an 8, you know it's a brand new one. And if it's a late 7, you know it's a fairly new one. But then there were eras where it was not sequential, which makes it, well, when was it actually graded? The only way to tell is the flip, the font, the sticker on the back, the different things like that. And by getting rid of that, I think that was a dangerous move. What do you think about
it? I very much respect cards and older holders for 2 reasons. One, it may be less likely they are altered, but 2, it tells me that it's a collector like me that has my 51 Bowman, that there's no chance in hell I'm sending it to the fumble fingers of PSA for them to crack it out to put it in a whole holder and mess up my mantle card. And I think a lot of collectors are not willing to, for some of these older pre-war vintage cards, not willing to risk something happening to their card for the sake of having it in a brand new holder.
I'm one of them. I'm scared to death to send it off. And I've seen so many people where they did a before, or show a picture of before or video when they send it in, and it comes back with some mark they have no recollection of it having, right? Like some ding corner or something that happened during the grading. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've certainly seen people that claim it to be true.
So one thing I'll say about that in PSA's defense is they do have a thing now that when they receive your card, they scan it and they post the picture of the scan so you can see what it looked like when they received it. I don't think they leave that up. I think once you get the card graded, then that image replaces it. So you almost have to do a screen grab. I want to make sure I say this, though, is I don't think all old grades are bad grades. There are a lot of old grades that hold up. You know, there are a lot of old 6s that I think if you sent them in today would still be 6s. But there are some, as people in the chat are lighting up like a Christmas tree about experiences they had where they cracked it, and then 20 years later they said, I should have slabbed it, and it gets a lower grade.
That shouldn't happen.
It shouldn't happen.
Their standards
Shouldn't
have not changed, have they?
Correct.
Then why is that happening?
Not on
Why is
paper, they haven't changed.
that company not being held to the fire? Why is Nat Turner not being asked that instead of what's his favorite set of the 1960s? That's an important question.
I've invited Nat and Peter on my channel many times, and I got at least we'll talk to them about it from SGC, but that was 3 months ago. I would ask those questions, which is probably why they wouldn't come on with me.
Here's a scenario for you, and this is pretty messed up. So in that instance, they're blowing up saying they crack and submit and it gets a lower grade. But if you got that old holder and you didn't crack it out, you let it set and it got a little sun faded, just not a whole lot, but good, good enough to change the grade on it. And you send it in for a re-slab, it'll still get the same grade. No?
Yep.
I mean, unless it's drastic. Like if a Kellogg's card cracks in the case and you send it in, it's a 10. I'm sure they wouldn't re-slab that as a 10. I would assume not. But if it's a little sun fading or something,
I think they would.
I don't even think they'll even look at it. They'll just re-slab it.
To respond to the comment here that Travis put, I totally respect your comment, Travis. I didn't say that all of them would come back the same. What I'm saying is not all old grades wouldn't hold up. Some would, and a lot wouldn't. But I don't think we can just dismiss, oh, that's an old slab, so it's not really a 7. I think some 7s from then are still 7s now. A lot aren't. I think that so I want to make sure I clarify that.
It's too bad that BCCG isn't still around, because people
be a lot of 10s.
People who collected numbers love to submit to them. They got
all
9s and 10s.
Will the PSA set registry always be as important to card values as it seems to right now? To your point that you said earlier, Dave, about the card and the 10 selling for a lot, and then somebody in the chat, I think it was Mike, said, well, it's all because of the set registry. Will the set registry continue to be the reason that PSA cards have a little bit more value, or will that at some point wear off?
No, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, I think there's a reason people pick their companies. I don't care what company my cards are in, although pre-war I prefer SGC and post-war PSA, but it's not a huge thing for me. But I think the registry is huge. SGC, they keep talking about it. They've been talking about it now for 15 years. Get one. They're not getting one. They're just not. I mean, why keep asking them? It's almost embarrassing. But I think that is a big part of it is the registry and why people submit to PSA. I can't believe that people would submit to one company because they just really like the holder more than the other. I don't know if that's a great reason for sending a card off. I mean, I think your company, you should feel that they are competent in identifying an authentic card. They should be competent in identifying overt alterations, and they should be competent in giving consistent, reliable grades. And I'll just say it over and over again. But repeatedly go back to PC if you don't really believe that company fits all three of those just because they have a registry you can put cards into. I don't know. I don't live in that world. I don't want to live in a world where I'm competing with. I don't get it. I do not get the registry. I'm sorry, and I know it's big, and a lot of people love it. To me, it's a reason to collect cards and just grade cards that you really don't want in your collection.
John, go ahead.
I was just going to answer that real quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about the competition, flexing, keeping up with the Joneses, and that is really what has had so many people so loyal to PSA, and it's brilliant on PSA's part. I collect a lot of what you people call oddball stuff, and I would post it like on a PSA site group in Facebook or whatever, and elsewhere, and I always get the same question: does PSA grade those? And I'd be like, no, they don't grade it. Oh, I wouldn't want it then. Like, they don't want anything that's not in a PSA slab. But I think that is here to stay until somebody comes up with a registry that is mixed, where you could put any card in there.
I agree with that. I think that would be huge, actually.
I think it would be huge too, because you know, people like me with my Frankenstein collection, I got.
I think all the major grading companies are doing they're doing okay. I mean, nobody's perfect. They're doing the best they can. Some of them, they're getting huge numbers. So things slip through and
everybody's out to
do in our day-to-day life. So I don't think any company's trying to scam us or pull one over on us, but we do rely a little bit too much. We take them a little too seriously, I think.
You know, I want to clear something up too. When I said a scam, I don't mean they're scammers. That's not what I mean. I just mean like we put a lot of faith. We put a lot of faith.
Let me ask you this, and this is what I was going to ask a second ago, and I think it fits in better now. So when we talk about grading companies, I know, John, like, you know, you and Dave have an insane amount of knowledge of how a card should look, what should be there, shouldn't be there. So if somebody came up to you with two cards and said, which is the fake, I think the two of you with, you know, a couple of lights and things would be able to figure out pretty quickly. You may not even need the lights, but to figure it out. But isn't having grading a good safety mechanism for newer collectors in the hobby who could have gotten taken advantage of, like the mom who brings her son in and he's starting to get into vintage cards? Isn't there some benefit there for them to be able to not get completely scammed? Because, you know, it would be easy to scam someone who doesn't really know it. I'll give you another example. Like the widow who brings in, you know, her husband's collection after he passes to the card shop, and they're all ungraded. There's such a wide variance in value of an ungraded card, but at a certain grade, it does provide some knowledge and some information. So would you say that you think that for newer collectors, it's a benefit to have grading, or are you just like, grading's just not for, you don't think it should be around at all?
Can I jump on that first?
Sure.
We'll just give an example. In general, I think compared to what the Wild West was when you're buying cards essentially sight unseen, really, and then came the internet, and that helps. I think the grading companies, the idea was fantastic, and it's still fantastic, but it's lost its way a little bit. But I'm going to give you an example of how I think that it is helpful. So my dad was a coin collector as well as a ball. We started off on coins, then we did some stamps, then we got into baseball cards in the early 70s. So when he passed away, I got a lot of coins that were just raw coins in the old books, you know. I don't know anything about coins. So, and I think some of them were really nice. They were. So over the past, 14 years, I sent those coins to, what is it? What are the PGSC, or what is, there's two big grading companies. And I think the one for Collectors Universe is, what is it? PGSC or something like that. Anyway, and I got these coins back, and they got grades, and believe it or not, a lot of them also were quote unquote cleaned, which would have been the card world would be altered. And that just was good for me when it came to unload them, that I wasn't selling, hey, I got an 1880 Indian head penny that looks mint to me, means nothing. And so I was able to, when I did sell some of that stuff, it gave it definition that a novice like me was able to sell it and get presumably a fair price for it. So I think that crosses over to people that are new to collecting, that at least gives them a peace of mind that this is what it says it is. This is what I'm getting, which is probably true a great majority of the time.
I want to answer in two parts. Number one, somebody that's in that case, yes, you want to protect them and so forth, and they should be buying from reputable card stores and sellers. Buying a PSA for a brand new person that knows nothing about cards, does not guarantee jack, because you know how many fake PSA slabs are being sold on eBay. So they could still get scammed. It boils down to who are you buying from, you know. But I want to say this, and there's a paradox that comes with every card in a slab. There's a paradox. When Dave and I grew up, we handled these cards. We felt these cards. We smelled these cards. The more reliant you are, the more that you only buy graded cards, the less you're ever going to know about cards, because you're never going to touch one, you're never going to smell one, and you're never going to be able to tell what a fake is when you see it, or if you hold it. In my opinion, so it's like we're sacrificing knowledge for protection, I guess.
Man, John, it just makes me feel like you know, I have some Cracker Jack cards, and they're majority of them are slabbed. But I mean, to hold a 1914 Cracker Jack in your hand, these paper thin beauties, to hold that and to look at it, and then have one in a slab, it's just night and day. It's like sex with and without a condom, I think. Sorry. I know it's your channel.
No, you're good. I don't.
I'm with you though. I'm with you.
I think that it definitely disconnects people from the original intent of the hobby, for sure.
No,
but
the original intent was the number, the slabs.
No, I mean, it really is. I mean, there is such a joy. I mean, when you get an old card of 50 Bowman Ted Williams and you just give it a good smell, and it smells like that old book from your grandmother's house, like that is it adds to the sensory overload of what the card does for you. And when you actually feel the grainy paper that they had then, instead of the smooth stuff, it genuinely is part of the experience. So these kids that don't have anything except for the plastic, that they're losing out on part of the sensory experience for sure. I completely agree with you, John.
Yeah. No,
it's very sterile, but you know, it's necessary. I mean, if you got a nice card that you're very proud that you have, it's nice for it to be protected, you know.
And you know what? You can't protect it in something like this. Doesn't protect it at all. It's got to be. It's got to have a flip.
There's nothing better than cards. I'll just say there's nothing better than cards in binders or in a penny sleeve and a top loader. I mean, I just love them that way, but the reality is it's not 1970 anymore. You know?
I wanted to go back to the smell thing though, because people that watch my channel will know that I say this, but the 1950 Drakes. Dave, you have any of those?
What? Yeah, complete that.
Okay, so they came in two different cakes. And what I've noticed is one of the cakes has a very distinctive smell. And even after all these years, if you hold that thing raw, you could smell it. Have you noticed that?
No.
No?
No.
If the card was soaked in Kurt's Card Care, would it smell like Kurt's Card Care solution instead of the cake?
No idea. I have no experience with any kind of.
Well, I want you to order one of those kits. Shoot it in your left eye. Shoot it in your mouth like some Banaka, and let us know what happens.
Well,
then we'll know.
You mentioned Kurt's, but there's other kits out there. Yeah. That's not the only one.
So I have no idea.
In these kits. I don't know if they're identical.
We were brought to this point because of the pursuant of the PSA 10.
Now, Dave,
and because of accelerating card prices.
Take those Drakes out of your binder and smell them, and let me know what happens.
They're all in PSA holders.
Oh, well, there you go. How the heck do you smell them?
And we have completed the circle with that. We have gone all the way around. Oh my gosh. So let me we started with, the tongue in cheek, and what do we disagree on? What do we agree on? And it is a conversation there is no right or wrong answer. There is the whole, well, if it feels slimy, it probably is. We've talked about, PSA and what's going on there and the pros and cons. What do you have anything else that we haven't covered that, Dave, you want to get off your chest?
Not really. I mean, my whole shtick on this is I want to be the ultimate conservative on this, but in reality, and just as I've seen the way that things are going, is not personally, and I don't feel that people should just calm down a little bit on cards, and that that it's okay to make them look better as long as you're not adding or overtly restoring, just some general cleaning stuff off cards, and that we shouldn't just lose our minds because someone's selling a kit that helps a card look better. Now, with that being said, I don't know what's in the kit, so I'm not condoning the kit at all. I'm not. And I would never order one, and I'd never have the kahunas to mess with cards. But I think that, every time we talk about cards, we're not talking. I want to see videos about people talking about the history of the cards and the rarity of a set, but we keep talking about centering. And and look how good this one looks, and look at the edges, and boy, this one's centered. And so that's why, it's because of that mindset is why we have people trying to improve the looks of the card, because that's what people care about.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's like, and I've said this over and over and over again. Grading has changed the hobby in a big way, because of the difference between 9 and 10s, getting tens of thousands of dollars. And when people get a card, and well, I don't know why I got that 4. Oh yeah, here the corner. They point out like every little tiny flaw, and nobody's. I say it all the time. Nobody's enjoying their cards anyway. They're not collecting cards. They're collecting slabs and numbers.
Yeah, I mean, well said. And I'll say this, Dave, I genuinely mean this. I really appreciate you considering me to participate in this. I have a ton of respect for both of you guys, your collections, your knowledge. I love both of your channels. I learn so much every time I watch. And the fact that you're like, Greg, will you do this? I'm like, I couldn't say yes fast enough. So I appreciate that. John, I know you were blindsided. Dave texted me and said, I'm going to do this before you even knew he was going to challenge you to this debate. And, I was chatting with you all day, and I'm chatting with Dave about how he's going to drop this on you. And I told Dave I wouldn't say anything, and it was fun, and I enjoy it. I think it's good to talk about these topics. But, John, you've been an awesome sport with the whole thing and had a really good attitude about it. So I'm honored to be here. Any parting shot you have for each other here?
Yeah, I do. I just have, I would be perfectly happy with about a small group of YouTubers sitting around 4 times a year around the coffee table, showing each other cards. And John's one of them. That is, to me, what this is all about, because it's all about looking at cards and being giddy about an acquisition. And more importantly, I like the videos when people show off their cards and they're excited about it, because it makes me happy for them. They're proud. And all this other stuff, I just don't have time for it. The nervousness of the hobby and the irritability of the hobby, I don't have time for that. And I think it's unhealthy for the hobby. And I'm just glad that the majority of the YouTubers that we all talk about, and all these guys, on the chat, I think have a real appreciation for cards, whether it's a dream card that costs too much that I could ever afford, or a dollar box card that they want to show because they're absolutely ecstatic that they found it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now I've given a lot, I've given opinions, and I just want to say this, everybody collects in their own way, and some people love grading, some people won't ever have a graded card. You do you. I don't judge anybody. I'm just sharing my opinions. But I want to thank you for hosting, and Dave's my favorite collector, so it's an honor to be on here with him. Honor to have him call me out. And my wife only has one phone number and one name if anything happens to me to call about my cards, and that's Dave's.
That's very cool. I love the mutual respect. Again, I'm honored to be a part of it. And I do have to say this too. This is only Dave's second live ever. And so this was not something that, he just took lightly. He's like, I haven't really done this much, but I think it would be good to do it. I think we should keep talking about it. John's the guy to talk to about it with. And so, thanks for doing that. And as always, I'm always game. So if you guys have another topic you want to throw down about, give me a call. I'd be happy to host it.
Graig, I really appreciate it. And again, I knew that you would keep the conversation, fair and balanced, and have some great insights yourself, and keep John and I from, going off on tangents too much. That's why we needed somebody here, because if you weren't here, I'd be holding up signs that say, "Can I talk now?"
You should see him when he gets together with. You should see him when he gets together with Orlando.
I'm going to be seeing Mr. Orlando very soon. I am closing on my house down in Florida week after next, and I can't wait to take a walk around in his neighborhood with him, doing some chats. And
are you moving to Lauderdale?
Well, I'm moving to. I have two homes. One in Bradenton, one in the Villages. I'm building in the Villages, and the Bradenton one is purchased, and so I'll have these two places. But I'm primarily going to live. It's Villages is pretty central, so I'll still be a couple hours from him.
Dave, you want to make a quick...
I'll come. I'll look you up when I go down to Pirate Spring Training in Bradenton.
Okay.
Dave, you want to make a quick bet on the Super Bowl? Here's my proposal. I'm a Niner fan, right? I live in Sacramento.
Yeah.
And you're a Kansas guy, Kansas City.
Yeah.
So I'm proposing this bet for you. The loser has to buy a Super Bowl shirt of the other guy's team and do a whole video wearing that shirt and declare that their team was not as good as the other. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm for that.
All right.
I don't feel real confident. I have to give a team.
What? No, you would wear a Niner shirt, that a Super Bowl.
So you're just giving me the Chiefs, and you're taking the Niners, and that's the bet.
Well, you're wearing a Chiefs jersey. You're a Chiefs fan.
Yeah.
Is we good?
We're good.
All right.
How many points are you going to give me? You going to give me the 1.5 or 2 points?
I'll give you 1.5.
You will?
Yeah, I'll give you 1.5.
No, I mean, I don't even need the Chiefs. Don't need the points.
So are the points involved or no?
I'll
give them to you. No points, straight up.
Straight up. I'll take the Chiefs.
147 people are still here. Thanks for hanging out. Thank you for watching. Thank you for participating, because this is way more fun when people are in here doing that. We maxed at 178 was the highest number I saw in the chat. And
then John went on his rant, and it dropped down to about 160. But that's the way it happens.
It always happens that way. But I wanted to ask you a question. Like the last question I was answering, you bust out laughing. What were you laughing at? Was there a comment?
Me?
No. Yeah. From Mookie, the comment was, "I learned two things tonight. One, Mangini trained for this bout, and two, Bluejacket may be wearing a dress."
What?
Yeah, that's very good.
Hey, good times by all, and I love this community of guys. It is a really great
group
of
awesome
guys.
Community.
Yeah,
great
it really
community.
is.
See everybody at the National, and maybe at Strongville. And
sounds good. I'll be at the National, but not Strongsville.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for tonight, and guys. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Night, John.
All right.
Night,
Good night.
Greg.